The world was white and endless, covered in deep snow that stretched from one horizon to the other. The wind screamed across the mountains, carrying ice that cut like knives against the skin. It was a world where silence was broken only by the storm, and life was rare. Yet in the middle of this frozen land, one figure moved slowly, stumbling step by step. She was not human. Her skin shone with a deep violet glow, strange and beautiful under the pale light of the frozen sun. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, tangled by the wind and heavy with frost. In her arms, she carried a small child, his body weak, his face pale, his breath shallow. Every step she took was heavy, every movement a battle, yet she kept walking, because she could not stop. The mother whispered to her child, her voice soft and broken. It was a lullaby, an old song from her people, a song meant to bring comfort in dark times. Her lips trembled, not only from the cold, but from the fear in her heart. She knew her child was slipping away, and she knew there was nothing she could do to stop it. Around her, the snow fell like ashes from a dead fire, covering the land in endless white. The mountains stood tall and cruel, jagged teeth against the sky. The storm howled, and the shadows of the peaks made her feel small and lost. Yet she did not cry. She did not scream. She only sang, her song fading into the snowstorm. The child coughed weakly, his small chest rising and falling as if each breath might be his last. The mother held him tighter, pressing her face against his cold skin. She whispered promises, telling him to stay strong, telling him that she would find a way. But deep inside, she feared she was only singing his final lullaby. Time seemed broken in that frozen world. Minutes felt like hours, hours like days. The mother's body was tired, her feet numb, her arms aching, but still she carried him. Love was stronger than her pain, and hope, though fragile, pushed her forward. She stopped on a small hill of ice, her knees sinking into the snow. There she sat, cradling her child, the storm swirling around them like a wild beast. Her eyes lifted to the sky, searching for something, anything. But the sky was only gray and cruel. No sun, no stars, no help. Her lullaby grew softer, almost breaking, her voice carried away by the wind. The child's eyes fluttered, half closed, his tiny hand resting against her chest. The mother's heart pounded with fear. She wanted to give him warmth, but the world had no mercy. Then, for the first time in hours, she heard something different. Not the storm, not the wind, not her song. It was a sound that did not belong to the frozen silence. It was soft at first, then clearer, the crunch of footsteps on snow. Her body froze, her song stopped, her eyes went wide. She turned her head, scanning the white world around her. And there, through the snow, a dark figure was moving slowly toward her. The figure was tall, wrapped in heavy clothing, the face hidden beneath a hood. The mother's heart raced, fear and hope clashing inside her. She pressed her child closer, shielding him with her body. The footsteps came closer, steady and careful. The figure stopped a few paces away, standing tall against the storm. For a long moment, there was silence, only the wind screaming between them. The mother stared at the figure, ready to fight, ready to run. But her body was weak, and her child was weaker still. The figure raised one hand, slowly, showing it was empty, showing no weapon. The mother's breath caught in her throat. She had heard stories of these beings, these strange creatures who came from the stars. Humans, they were called. Some stories said they were cruel, destroyers of worlds. Others said they were kind, bringers of Fi, and hope. She did not know which story was true, and now one of them stood before her, in the middle of the snowstorm. Her voice trembled as she whispered to her child, though the human could not understand her words. The figure took one step closer, then stopped, waiting, watching. The mother's heart was torn between fear and trust. Her child shivered in her arms, and she knew time was running out. She did not know if the human had come to save them or end them, but she knew one thing. Everything was about to change. The storm screamed louder, but the mother could hear her own heartbeat. The human stood a few steps away, silent in the snow, a shadow among the white mountains. His breath rose like smoke in the cold air. His heavy coat was covered with frost, and his boots sank deep into the ice. He did not move fast. He did not rush. He stood calm, like a hunter who knew patience. The mother tightened her arms around her child. Her violet eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, her skin shivering against the storm. Her child let out a weak cry, too soft to fight the wind. The sound cut into her heart like a blade, and for a moment, she forgot the human and looked only at her baby. The human lowered his head, his hand still raised to show peace. Slowly, he bent down and pressed his knee into the snow. He was not trying to look taller, he was trying to look smaller. The mother frowned, not sure what this act meant. The human reached into his pack, careful, slow, showing no threat. He pulled out a strange device, small and glowing with faint warmth. It was smooth, metal and glass, alive with light. The mother's eyes narrowed, her body tensed. She thought it was a weapon, but then the human held it close to his chest and opened his hands. Steam rose from it, warm and gentle. Not fire, not ice. The mother blinked, confused, her mind torn between fear and wonder. The child shivered. Ed again, and his breath came out in a broken sound. The human's eyes, hidden under the hood, softened. He leaned forward just a little, pressing the glowing device against his own chest, showing it was safe. Then he pointed to the child, his hand open. The message was clear. He wanted to help. The mother's throat tightened. Her people had told stories of humans, stories of war, stories of fire raining from the sky. But here, this one human knelt in the snow, showing warmth, showing peace. Her child coughed weakly, and her heart screamed for action. She hesitated, torn in two. Her arms clutched her child. Her body wanted to protect him from every danger. But her mind whispered that this was the only chance. Her child's eyes half closed, his lips pale, his life slipping away like snow in the wind. The human did not move closer. He waited, his breath fogging the air. Minutes stretched into forever. The storm raged, and still the human knelt. Finally, with trembling hands, the mother lowered the child slightly, not all the way, but enough to show her choice. The human's eyes widened with relief. He stepped forward carefully, like a man crossing thin ice. He placed the glowing device near the child's chest. A soft hum filled the air. The light spread, warm and golden. The child stirred. His breathing grew stronger. A faint color returned to his face. The mother gasped. Her song caught in her throat. For the first time, she felt hope, small but real. Her eyes lifted to the human, her lips parting as if to speak. The human nodded once, firm and simple. No words passed, but the silence spoke louder than speech. The mother understood that this stranger had saved her child, at least for now. But trust was not yet born. Fear still lived in her chest. The storm swirled around them, hiding the world beyond. But in that small circle of snow and light, a fragile bond was forming. The human slowly pulled back, not touching the child, not reaching for more. He returned the device to his chest and held his hands open once again. The mother looked at him long and hard. His face was still hidden in the hood, shadowed, but she could see his eyes. They were not cruel, they were not cold. They carried something strange, something she had not seen in her own kind for many days. Mercy. The child gave a soft whimper and clutched at the mother's clothes. She held him close, her heart still racing. The human rose slowly to his feet, his boots crunching in the snow. He looked around the storm as if searching, as if listening for something. The mother followed his gaze and felt her stomach tighten. There were other sounds in the wind, faint, but real. The crunch of snow, but heavier, sharper, not like the human's soft steps. Voices carried in the storm, harsh and cruel. The mother's blood turned cold. She knew those voices. She knew that sound. The hunters had come, their shadows moving like ghosts through the blizzard. They were close, too close, and they would not stop until they had her and her child. The human turned back to her, his eyes hard now. He raised a hand quickly, a signal for silence. Then he stepped in front of her, standing between the hunters and the mother with her child. The storm roared around them, but the human did not move. The mother's heart pounded. For the first time, she wondered if the stories of humans were wrong. Maybe this one was not a destroyer. Maybe he was something else. Maybe he was a shield, a protector, a savior in the snow. The storm screamed across the mountains, but inside the mother's arms, the world was smaller. She could feel her child's chest rising and falling, slow and weak, each breath a fragile thread. The glow from the human's strange device had given warmth, but it was fading now. The boy's lips trembled. His tiny fingers curled weakly against her skin. The mother's voice shook as she began to sing again. Her lullaby was soft, a melody from long ago, a song of comfort for children. But her words cracked, for her heart was breaking with each fragile breath her son took. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering promises, telling him to stay, telling him not to leave her. The human stood close, silent but alert, his eyes never leaving the mother and child. He looked at the device in his hands, then at the storm around them. The power was not endless, the warmth was fading, and the child's life still hung on a thin edge. He clenched his jaw and reached for another tool in his pack, a cylinder glowing faintly blue. The mother's eyes snapped to him, filled with suspicion and fear. She pulled her child closer, her voice low and sharp, as if daring the human to make a wrong move. The human paused, then slowly set the cylinder down in the snow. He stepped back, raising both hands once more to show no harm. The mother stared, her breath heavy, her heart torn. The child coughed, a sound so weak it barely cut through the wind. Her fear cracked, and for the first time, she looked at the object not as a weapon, but as a chance. The human pointed to it, then to the child, his gesture clear and desperate. The mother hesitated only a moment longer before she reached out. Her fingers shook as she touched the cylinder, feeling its faint warmth. She pressed it close to the child's chest, and a hum filled the air. The light spread across his small body, soft and glowing, seeping into his skin like fire in the cold. The child's chest rose deeper this time, his breathing steadier, though still weak. His eyelids fluttered, and for the first time, he let out a small sound, a whimper, a cry. Tears filled the mother's eyes, her song breaking, her body trembling with hope and fear. She kissed his forehead, whispering, "Stay, my son, stay with me." The human let out a slow breath of relief, but his eyes remained sharp. He looked into the storm again, scanning the white haze, listening for danger. The hunters' voices still carried in the wind, closer now, cruel and searching. He knew they did not have much time. The mother saw his gaze and understood. She looked down at her child, then back at the human, torn between running and hiding. Her body was weak, her child fragile. Escape was impossible. The human reached into his coat and pulled out another tool, a cloak of fabric that shimmered strangely. He held it out toward her, the fabric rippling like water in the air. The mother frowned, not understanding. He placed it over his own arm, and instantly his shape blurred, almost fading into the storm. The mother gasped, her eyes wide, realizing it was a cloak of hiding. The human pulled it off and handed it to her, urging her with his hands. She shook her head at first, thinking it was a trick, but the child's cough broke her doubt, and she slowly wrapped the cloak around both of them. Her body and her child shimmered, their outlines softening until the snow seemed to swallow them. The human gave a single nod, satisfied. Then he turned toward the sound of the hunters, his stance ready, his body strong. The mother watched him, her heart confused. Why would this stranger, this human, risk his life for her and her child? The child stirred in her arms again, breathing more easily under the cylinder's glow. She kissed his cheek, her tears freezing against her skin. Her lullaby rose again, quiet and trembling, mixing with the storm. The song was not just for comfort now. It was a prayer, a call to any power that might save them. The footsteps grew louder, heavy and sharp, the hunters closing in. Their voices cut through the snow, shouting, cursing, searching. The human drew a blade from his side, long and cold. The sonne, edge glowing faintly with blue light. He gripped it tight, his breath steady, his eyes hard. The mother watched, fear and hope twisting in her chest. Her child's weak breath warmed against her skin, stronger now, but still fragile. She pressed him close, whispering into his ear, promising again and again that she would not let go. Yet deep inside, she knew everything hung on the battle about to come. The storm howled louder. The hunter's shadows moved in the white mist. The human raised his blade, standing firm, ready to face them. The mother tightened her arms around her child, her heart pounding. She knew the hunters would show no mercy, and yet, here was a human who might. And in that moment, as her child's weak breath echoed against her chest, the mother realized that fate had changed. The song she sang was no longer a final lullaby. It was the beginning of something greater, something terrifying, something unknown. The snowstorm raged like a living beast, clawing at the mountains, swallowing sound and sight. The mother crouched low, wrapped in the strange shimmering cloak the human had given, her child pressed tightly against her chest. The boy's breath was fragile, but steadier now, his small chest rising and falling with weak rhythm. Her lullaby trembled on her lips, a song to keep him calm, to keep herself from breaking. But her eyes never left the human standing before her. He was tall, strong, his blade glowing faintly blue against the pale storm. The wind whipped around him, yet he stood like a wall, unshaken, unafraid. The hunters' voices grew closer, their footsteps cutting sharp lines into the snow. The mother's heart thundered with doubt. What if the human betrayed her? What if he gave her to the hunters? What if the stories were true? She had trusted him only with a cloak, with a glowing device, with the smallest chance for her child. But trust was not easy. Trust was dangerous. Trust could kill them. The human shifted his stance, lowering himself, ready. His eyes flickered back to her, a silent promise in their depth. He pointed once to the child in her arms, then pressed his fist to his chest. It was a gesture she did not fully know, but it felt like a vow. The hunters' shadows appeared through the storm, black figures with glowing weapons, their armor cracked and scarred, their helmets sharp, their voices harsh with laughter and anger. They spread out, moving like wolves around prey, their eyes scanning the snow. One of them barked a command, and the group slowed, sniffing for weakness. The human lowered himself further, hiding behind a jagged rock, his body tense as a bowstring. The mother pressed her child closer and prayed her cloak would hold. Her son stirred, his weak breath brushing her skin, and her heart nearly shattered with fear. If he coughed now, if he cried, the hunters would hear. The lead hunter stepped closer, his eyes glowing red through the mask. He dragged a weapon through the snow, leaving a long scar of fire behind. The mother trembled, her song caught in her throat, her arms aching from holding her son so tight. But she did not move. She could not. The human gripped his blade harder, his breath deep and steady, his eyes locked on the hunters, measuring distance, counting steps. He was one man, one human, against a pack of killers. And yet, he did not retreat, he did not break. The hunters spread wider, circling. The leader barked again, pointing toward the rocks where the mother hid. The others began to move in that direction, weapons humming with deadly energy. The mother felt her throat close, fear choking her, her cloak shimmering weakly. And then the human moved. He leapt from the shadows, his blade flashing like lightning in the storm. The nearest hunter never saw him coming. The blade cut through armor with a hiss. The body fell, the snow turning dark beneath it. The storm roared louder. The hunters shouted, turning their weapons toward the human. He ducked low, rolled through the snow, striking again, fast and precise. 2 more hunters fell before they even raised their rifles. The human's movements were sharp, practiced, every step a dance of survival. The mother watched, frozen between awe and fear. This human fought like a storm-given flesh, his courage fierce, his will unshaken. But there were too many. Their weapons burned bright, their voices filled with fury. The human gritted his teeth, blocking one strike, dodging another, his blade clashing with fire. The child whimpered softly in her arms, and the mother pressed him close. Her cloak flickered, the shimmer fading for a heartbeat. One hunter's head snapped toward her, his red eyes narrowing. He shouted to the others, pointing toward the rocks. The mother's blood ran cold. Her secret was slipping, the cloak failing, her child too weak to stay silent. The hunters moved faster, splitting their focus between the human and the hidden prey. The mother's heart pounded. If they reached her, it was over. The human saw it too, his eyes widened, rage burning inside them. He roared, a sound that shook the storm, and charged at the hunters with reckless fury. He struck fast, pushing them back, drawing their eyes, their weapons, their hate toward himself. It was a risk, a sacrifice, a shield made of flesh and steel. The mother gasped, realizing the truth. This human, this stranger from another world, was risking everything for her child. He had no reason, no blood tie, no debt to pay, and yet he fought like the boy in her arms was his own. Her throat tightened, her heart torn between fear and a strange new hope. The lullaby rose again, soft against the storm, trembling but alive. Her son's breath was still weak, but steadier, stronger than before. The cloak shimmered again, hiding them once more. The hunters screamed, their weapons flashing. The human met them with fire in his eyes, with strength in his hands, with defiance in his heart. The storm swallowed the battle, but the mother knew one truth. The risk of trust had already been taken, and there was no turning back. The storm howled like a wild animal, carrying the cries of battle across the frozen mountains. The human's blade flashed in the white blur, each strike sharp and desperate. He moved with speed, cutting down hunters who charged at him, his breath heavy but his spirit unbroken. But for every enemy who fell, two more seemed to rise from the snow, their shadows endless. The mother crouched behind the jagged rocks, her child pressed against her chest. The cloak shimmered faintly around them, hiding their bodies from the hunter's eyes. Her lullaby trembled on her lips, not strong, not steady, but filled with fear and hope. Each note was a prayer that the hunters would not hear her child's weak breathing. The boy stirred, his breath catching in the cold air, his chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. She kissed his forehead, whispering softly, telling him to stay quiet, telling him to hold on, but her eyes never left the human who fought in the storm. His figure was a blur of steel and fire, standing alone against an army. The hunters shouted to one another, their voices sharp and cruel. "Find her," one bark said, his voice echoing through the storm. "She cannot hide forever," another growled, his weapon glowing red in the snow. The mother's heart tightened, her fingers digging into the cloak as if her will could keep it strong. The human heard their words too, his jaw tightening. He lunged forward, his blade clashing with the lead hunter, sparks bursting against the storm. The clash was fierce, steel against burning energy, the sound sharp like thunder. The human pushed hard, forcing the hunter back, but another leapt from the side, striking his shoulder. He stumbled, blood spilling dark against the snow. The mother gasped, her lullaby breaking, her child letting out a small whimper. The cloak flickered, light bending weakly, her body almost revealed. Her heart raced, panic burning through her veins. The hunters turned their heads, one pointing toward the rocks. "There!" he shouted, his voice filled with triumph. The mother froze, clutching her child, her breath caught in her throat. But before they could move, the human roared and threw himself into their path. His blade cut through the storm again, striking fast, his body fueled by rage and will. He moved with the strength of a man who refused to let go. Even wounded, even bleeding, he fought harder, forcing the hunters to turn their eyes back to him. The mother watched, her chest aching, tears freezing against her cheeks. The hunters pressed forward, surrounding him, their weapons glowing with deadly heat. The human stood tall, his blade raised, his eyes burning with defiance. For a moment, the storm seemed to pause, holding its breath. Then the clash erupted again, steel and fire, light and shadow. The mother felt her body tremble, her child breathing faintly against her chest. She knew she could not stay hidden forever. Her heart screamed that she must protect her son, but her soul whispered another truth. Without the human, they were already lost. Her eyes hardened, her song stopped, her arms shifted. She laid her child gently against the snow, wrapping the cloak tighter around him. The boy whimpered softly, his tiny hands curling. The mother rose, her body weak but her spirit burning. She picked up a shard of ice sharp as a blade. Her breath came fast, her violet eyes glowing brighter. Her people were not warriors, but a mother's love gave her strength. She stepped out from the rocks, silent as the storm. The hunters did not see her at first, their eyes fixed on the human. He struck again, blocking one weapon, dodging another, his blade cutting deep. But when one hunter raised his rifle toward his chest, the mother moved. She leapt from the side, slamming the ice shard into the hunter's throat. The man choked, his body falling back into the snow. The human's eyes widened, shock and respect flashing across his face. The mother grabbed the fallen weapon and turned, her hands shaking but steady enough. Energy hummed through the rifle, the glow lighting her skin. She fired, the blast cutting through the storm, striking another hunter. The snow lit up with fire, the man collapsing in a hiss of steam. The other hunters shouted in rage, their attention snapping toward her. The human roared, stepping forward to shield her, his blade cutting them down before they could reach her. The mother's chest heaved, her body weak but her spirit unbroken. She glanced back at her child, still hidden beneath the cloak, still breathing faintly. Her voice whispered a broken promise. "I will not fail you, my son." Then she raised the weapon again, standing side by side with the human. Together they fought, alien and human, mother and stranger. The storm swallowed their battle, but their bond burned brighter than the snow. For every hunter that came, one of them fell, their bodies vanishing into the frozen white. But the enemy way was not finished. Their voices still echoed, their shadows still spread wide. The human bled, the mother shook, the child stirred, but none of them gave in, none of them surrendered. The hunters had found their prey, yet they had also found resistance. And in that frozen battlefield, enemies in the snow were about to learn the cost of mercy and love. The storm raged across the mountain, its voice like 1,000 drums in the night. Snow swirled in violent circles, hiding the land in a blinding white sea. But inside that storm, fire burned, the fire of battle, the fire of survival. The human and the alien mother stood side by side, their breath heavy, their bodies trembling but unbroken. The hunters closed in, their glowing weapons cutting through the snow like red scars. Their voices were sharp, filled with hatred, echoing through the frozen air. They moved like wolves, circling, snarling, ready to strike. But the human stood firm, his blade glowing blue, his stance unshaken. Beside him, the mother clutched the stolen rifle, her violet skin shining in the storm's light. Her hands shook, but her eyes were fierce, filled with fire that fear could not kill. Behind them, hidden under the cloak, the child stirred, breathing weak but steady. His faint breath was the reason they stood, the reason they fought. The leader of the hunters stepped forward, his armor cracked but strong, his weapon burning bright. "You cannot run," his voice boomed, cruel and cold. "Give us the child, and your death will be quick." The human's jaw tightened, his eyes burning as he raised his blade. "No," the mother whispered, her voice trembling but firm. The human glanced at her, and for a moment, their eyes met. In that silence, they understood each other. There was no surrender. There was no giving up. There was only the fight. The hunters charged, the storm erupting with fire and steel. The human roared and met them head on, his blade striking with lightning speed. He blocked, he slashed, he dodged, every move sharp and practiced. Two hunters fell quickly, their bodies vanishing into the snow. The mother raised her weapon, the blast humming through her arms. She fired, the shot cutting through the storm, striking one hunter square in the chest. He dropped with a hiss, steam rising from his armor. Her heart pounded, her body weak, but she fired again, and another hunter fell. But the hunters were many, and they pressed harder, their weapons glowing with deadly light. The human was struck on the arm, the burn deep and sharp. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain, his blade flashing brighter. He cut down another, his fury carrying him forward. The mother's rifle shook in her hands, the power draining. She fired again, the blast weaker this time, but still enough to wound. The hunter stumbled, his scream lost in the storm. She gasped, her knees buckling, but she refused to fall. The storm swallowed their cries, their strikes, their breath. Snow turned red and black, the ground littered with shadows. The human fought like a beast, each strike filled with rage and mercy alike. He fought not for himself, but for the child hidden in the cloak. The mother, though weak, though fragile, stood beside him, her heart burned with the same fire. her will unbroken. She had feared humans, she had hated the stories, but now she saw one risk everything for a life that was not his own. The hunters grew desperate, their leader shouting commands. He lunged forward, his weapon clashing with the human's blade. The impact shook the air, sparks flying, light blinding. The two locked together, strength against strength, fire against steel. The human roared, pushing back, his muscles straining. The leader snarled, pressing harder, his weapon humming with deadly power. For a moment it seemed the human might fall, his knees sinking into the snow. But then the mother moved, raising her rifle one last time. Her shot struck the leader's side, the blast burning through his armor. He staggered, his weapon faltering, his roar breaking into a scream. The human seized the moment, his blade cutting clean. The leader fell, his body collapsing into the snow. The storm screamed louder, as if mourning the dead. The other hunters froze, their eyes wide with shock. Without their leader, their courage cracked, their voices faltered. They looked at one another, fear creeping into their hearts. The human raised his blade again, his breath heavy but fierce. The mother aimed her rifle, her arms shaking but steady enough. The hunters hesitated, then turned, retreating into the storm. Their shadows vanished, their voices fading, leaving only silence and snow. The battlefield was quiet now, save for the storm's endless howl. The human lowered his blade, his body bleeding, his breath ragged. The mother dropped the empty rifle, her knees sinking into the snow. Her arms trembled as she crawled back to her child, pulling the cloak away. The boy's chest rose and fell, weak but alive. She pressed her lips to his forehead, tears spilling from her glowing eyes. "Safe," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You are safe." The human stood nearby, watching, his face hidden but his eyes soft. The mother looked up at him, her heart torn between fear and gratitude. For the first time, she did not see an enemy, she saw a savior. Their eyes met again, a bond unspoken, born in fire and snow. The battle was over, but the war for trust had only just begun. The storm began to quiet, its furious howl softening into a tired whisper. The battlefield was covered in shadows of fallen hunters, their bodies half buried beneath drifting snow. The human stood tall but weary, his blade lowered, his breath heavy, his wounds burning against the cold. The mother knelt in the snow, her arms wrapped tightly around her child, whispering soft words into his ear. Her boy's chest rose and fell with weak rhythm. But the glow of life had not left him. His tiny hand clutched at her clothes, his eyes half closed but still alive. The mother's heart ached with relief, her tears freezing on her violet cheeks. She kissed him again and again, promising in trembling whispers that he was safe. The human stepped closer, slow, careful, his boots crunching against the frozen ground. The mother raised her head. Her glowing eyes meeting his, her body tense with habit. But there was no threat in his stance, no weapon raised, no sign of cruelty. Instead, he reached into his pack and pulled out a small bundle, wrapping it in thick fabric. He placed it gently in the snow between them, pushing it closer with one hand. It was food, rations from his world, sealed and strange, smelling of warmth and life. The mother stared, her lips parting in shock, for never had she thought a human would share. Her heart trembled, torn between suspicion and gratitude. The human pointed to the bundle, then to her child. His meaning was clear. It was not for him, it was for them. The mother's throat tightened, her arms clutched her boy closer. For so long she had believed humans were destroyers, takers, hunters. Yet here was one who gave without demand, who bled for a child not his own. She reached out slowly, her hand shaking, and pulled the bundle close. Her boy stirred, breathing the faint warmth that rose from it. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "Hope." A word almost lost in the storm. The human sank into the snow, his shoulders heavy, his wounds deep. Blood stained his coat, his breath came slow, his strength fading. The mother frowned, her heart tightening with fear. She placed her child gently back beneath the shimmering cloak, then crawled to him, her hands pressed against his wound, glowing faintly with her alien touch. Her people's gift was not strong, not endless, but it could heal a little. The human's body flinched, then stilled, his eyes closing for a moment. When they opened again, he looked at her, confusion and gratitude in his gaze. The mother whispered, though she knew he could not understand, "You saved us. Now I will save you." Her voice cracked, but her will was firm. Her hands glowed brighter, the wound slowing, the bleeding lessening. The human watched her with silent eyes. For a long moment they said nothing, yet everything was spoken. Two enemies, two strangers, brought together by a fragile life in the snow. The storm above them began to fade, the clouds breaking to reveal a pale sun. The mother looked at the light, her chest trembling. For days she had walked in endless darkness. For hours she had feared only death. But now, as the sun touched the snow, she felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt hope. The human stood slowly, his body heavy but steady. He looked at the child, then at the horizon, his eyes sharp with thought. He pointed toward the mountains, then to himself, then to her and the boy. His meaning was clear. He wanted them to follow. He would lead them to safety. The mother hesitated, her heart torn. Her people had taught her that humans could not be trusted, but this one had fought for her, had bled for her, had saved her son. To refuse him now would be to refuse life itself. She looked down at her child, his small face soft against the cloak. Then she raised her head, her eyes locking with the human's. She gave a single nod, small but sure. The bond was made, not of words, not of blood, but of trust. They gathered what little they had, the cloak, the glowing device, the food. The mother carried her boy, her arms strong with love. The human walked ahead, his blade sheathed, his shoulders heavy but proud. Together they moved into the white horizon, leaving the battlefield behind. The snow crunched beneath their feet, the storm's voice fading into silence. The world ahead was still cruel, still filled with danger, but they were not alone anymore. And that made all the difference. The child stirred, letting out a soft sound, not a cry, but a sigh of life. The mother smiled through her tears, her lullaby rising once more. This time it was not a final song, not a farewell. It was a beginning, a promise, a vow that no storm could break. The human listened, his steps steady, his eyes watching the horizon, and in that frozen land, a new story began. The story of a mother, her child, and a human whose footsteps had changed everything forever.